Well, hello. My name is Dan Jones, and it's my true honor to introduce Dan Scott. Now, Danny helped prepare a lot of the slides, but I did take some liberties, and it's made him a little nervous. But what he really wanted to say is he loves SAGES a lot. And if you don't have one, he wants everyone to have one of the same buttons that he enjoys. Now, Danny was a very cute baby. He was very proud of his hands because he thinks his hands were born to actually hold the laparoscope and do the bean drop. He was very cute. And early on, he was a very happy kid because he knew that one day he'd grow up and be able to play with those pig stomachs. He had all the right stuff to be a great surgeon and a president of SAGES. He had a lot of courage, and he was not afraid of the blood. He liked his preoperative markings. And he was always committed to deliberate practice. Now, he also knew if he was going to be president, he had to learn the dance moves. And that's Danny in the back. And for those of you coming to the sing-off, you'll see that the dance moves have not changed at all. He's had me practice to doing that as well. So it's a good skit, Danny. Now, this is SMU. This is where he went to college. And he actually got a degree in engineering so he'd be able to pass the fuse test. And he fell in love with literature there. And these are his two favorite books, The Cat in the Hat and Oh, the Places You'll Go. And both Alexis and Caroline will attest that these are their favorite books. Most of us, we're very content with thing 1 and thing 2. But knowing Danny, he's always trying to think about thing 3. He went off to LSU Medical School, worked in the mission. Here's his parents, his mom's here today. Always liked to travel. And this is where I caught up with Danny, at Parkland Hospital at UT Southwestern. And this is his graduating crew. Now, we together created what was called the Southwestern Center for Minimally Invasive Surgery. Danny originally was going to do 1 year in the lab and go out into private practice. So he obviously got, distracted. He now has over 121 publications as a leading academic surgeon in many, many organizations. But this picture, Danny and I both like because we don't have any gray hair. Now, this is Danny with his family, Sarah, wedding in New Orleans. I had the privilege of going there. Danny's again off immediately to Hawaii after his marriage. Now, his first job, he went to Tulane and created the excellent simulation center there under his leadership. But then after Hurricane Katrina, he sort of regrouped, headed home to Texas. And as you all know in Texas, if you're a good Texan, you're never really supposed to leave for very long. So he came by horse back to UT Southwestern Medical Center and created, again, a superb simulation center concentrating on training to proficiency. Now, he also did research both in notes and in magnetic surgery. And again, there was no place he wouldn't put his scope. As Vice Chair of Education and Program Director, he had a number of trainees come through for over 5 years, and this was a real passion for his and a lot of work. Now, he's done so well, he's an assistant dean, and UT Southwestern has increased their interest in simulation. They're building out a 30,000 square foot education and simulation center that Danny will be in charge of. Now, I know Danny does laparoscopy because I did it with him as a trainee. We didn't do too much open surgery, but now he's retooling as he gets older, and you can see him enjoying a good open operation as well. Now, to try to get into the psyche of Danny, you got to know a little bit about his parents and particularly his mom. His mom's an artist. And when I was working with Dan at UT Southwestern, he was really bothered I didn't have any art up in my house. And so he invited me to his apartment, which had all this amazing art. He said, Dan, pick one out and, I'll sell it to you on cheap. Just don't tell my mom. And I picked out this tree. I really liked the tree. It was a really cool tree. And he says, well, you can't buy one tree. You need 2 more trees. And I said, well, why is that? Because he says, well, they're a series. These trees are a series. And I think it gets into the psyche of how he was raised. This is what I would call a tree. This is the same tree. This is the abstract version or a geometric version of the tree. And this is the surreal tree. So where most of us struggle looking at the forest and the trees, Danny's looking at the abstract, the surreal, and the virtual. Now, Danny has other heroes. Now, Danny's not a big hunter. What he likes to do is, well, if you look in this picture, he's not looking for ducks. He's actually looking for that beer can up in that tree. And he's not finding it. So what he does is he goes and gets a bigger scope. I'll let Danny tell you about this. But I went hunting with him recently in December, and I'm not a hunter. And so what he did is he put me at 150 yards. He gave me the target. He had me fire 3 times. The whole time he gave me instructions on how to breathe, how to aim, how to shoot, how to hold. And he simply kept telling me, this is just like the simulation lab. It's repetition, deliberate practice with expert coaching. So finally, I centered my bullets and got to move on. Now, one of the beautiful things about Danny, he lives in Highland Park, and it's really close to his work, but sometimes there can be traffic. But this year particularly, he's used his presidential vehicle to make sure that he gets to work on time. Now, Danny and I had the privilege a few years ago under the leadership of Steve Schweisberg to do the program together, and I really thought that these shirts were pretty colorful. But Danny didn't like them, and so he quickly dressed us in Dr. Seuss outfits, and he finally found his thing 3 with Dan Heron. Now, the other thing about Danny you may not know is he's been working for 20 years on his car, and he spends a lot of time and pretty much all of his money doing things to this car, and I didn't know what it was that was so passionate, what he liked so much about this, until I did a little of this research and found out it's really not the engine he's been working on all along. It's been the exterior of the car and the theme of the fire truck for Dr. Seuss. Now, after medical school, he went on a 12-week voyage to Alaska and Antarctic, so he loves to travel. With Alexis and Caroline, his 11 and 9-year-old, and Sarah, that's what the Danny Scott and his family does. They love to travel, and they love to go to national parks. And they tell me, guys, you guys are going July 4th to Mount Rushmore. And again, if you think about the art and the realism, this is what Mount Rushmore looks like to you and me. But for Danny, what he sees through his eyes of sages and his love of sages is something more like this. Now, Danny's been holding the torch for all of us for a long time, starting back in 2012. He's been on leadership positions as our treasurer and vice president before becoming president. And Danny, we're all very proud of you. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. Now, Danny also, in simulation before I go, he gave me this picture to say, he's willing to go new places. But what I know, this mechanical bull is actually a simulator. And when I was trying to figure out where he wanted to go, I looked on the internet, and this is what I came up with. Global, outer space, still with the theme of the meeting this week. Danny, we've been friends for 20 years. I'm very proud of you. You've done an awesome job. Thank you very much. And all of us, we don't have a beer, but maybe we can pretend we do and give him a big salute.
Thank you very much, Dan. That really is a special introduction and shows just how close Dan and I have been for many, many years, that he knows me that well and can do such a wonderful role. So thank you very much. These are my disclosures today, but my real disclosures that I'm going to share with you, my opinions. And this is a fantastic organization. I am extremely proud of SAGES, what we stand for, what we are accomplishing. I am deeply honored to be the 2017 SAGES president, and I'm grateful for this tremendous opportunity to all of you for being here today. I have had the distinct privilege of working with great people this year, and 2 are shown here, Horacio Asbin and Melina Vasiliou, who have done an outstanding job putting together this year's program. Well, they are dynamic, people who can accomplish wonderful things, and a special congratulations to Melina on the birth of her new baby girl this year. They brought to us a fantastic program, over 1,700 submissions from 56 countries, and I'd like to pause for a minute and welcome all of our international guests and members. You are extremely important to us. We want you here sharing these experiences with us and to be part of the SAGES family. So welcome to all of our international friends and guests from around the world. We have over 1,100 presentations today, or in this meeting, from 374 people presenting. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making our meeting so wonderful, so special. As Dan said, one of the meeting themes this year is I Love SAGES. And this is incredibly important to think about the sustainability and where we're going in the next 30 plus years of our future. Well, the foundation is that future. It's the lifeblood of our organization that allows us to accomplish the things that I'm going to tell you about today for the SAGES state of mind. And so I want everyone in this room to wear proudly an I Love SAGES pin, indicating that they've given at least a $10 donation. And I would especially encourage you to do a recurring donation where it's year in and year out, where we have that level of participation, especially from our members. These are all quotes of things that I heard people say this week here in Houston. I heard about SAGES from one of my mentors. This is a surgeon who's a regular member now, a routine part of our organization that grew up in Brazil. I presented my work and I knew this was the place for me. This came from others at our Monday night orientation session for new committee chairs. This society gets things done, and I'll come back to that as a theme. It is because we have so many different kinds of people that we are successful, and we want diversity in our organization. The people and the culture at SAGES are different from other organizations, and that could not be more true. This is where I met friends and colleagues that I can get help from whenever I need it, and mentorship is part of the SAGES state of mind. At SAGES, I know our work has an impact on the field of surgery. This is our family away from home. And if we will be away from home, it's so wonderful to think that the work that we are doing is worthwhile. Well, my SAGES journey started in 1999 in San Antonio, and I'm going to go through a lot of my journey with you today to share with you what I think are the key concepts in this complex SAGES state of mind that is so vibrant and so important for our organization. Well, mentorship, as I mentioned, is key. And this is one of my pivotal mentors. You may not recognize him in this photo. It's a little bit older. But you may say to yourself, well, I've seen him with famous people like Michael DeBakey. Or you may say to yourself, well, maybe I've seen him in a movie. He looks like a movie star. I just couldn't place from where. But lo and behold, this individual is Steve Schweitzberg. And Steve is a past president of our organization who has repetitively told me, Danny, it's about the journey, not the destination. And I've learned to heed those words and to understand that they are true, that it's about the relationships that we form, it's about what we learn from one another, and how we collectively create our future, and not so much focus on getting there, but rather about working together on the journey. This is another visionary in our organization, and you can see he's looking out from a high post, and you may not recognize him from up there, but this is past President Michael Brunt. And Mike has also been a great role model for me, teaching me how to be very reflective, very thoughtful, and very careful about how we proceed. Well, Mike has been very generous with his time and has had several informal presidential retreats. Here we are at his ranch in South Texas for a very long weekend with me and Brian Duncan. And believe it or not, we spent a lot of that weekend talking about the business of this organization. And these types of relationships allow us to have continuity very closely in our leadership. More recently, Dan Jones joined us for one of these informal presidential retreats, and we had a similar wonderful experience and time to share our thoughts about the future of SAGES. Well, I like this Darwin quote about being adaptable. And one thing I've learned this year as the president of SAGES is that we must remain nimble as an organization, and we must see what we must undertake to stay relevant. Darwin also said not to waste time. And I think that is an important concept that we embrace at SAGES. So last summer, it was very obvious to our leadership that we needed to more closely examine the technology backbone of our organization. And so I held a technology retreat, shown here with some very bright individuals, I think most of whom you'll recognize, A special shout out to Mark Talamini for winning the Distinguished Service Award this week from SAGES. He was there with us as well. And this was very good to help us get off the ground improvements and enhancements and future directions of the things listed here. I'm especially grateful to our speakers yesterday, Dave Kirpin and Brian Jacob, for highlighting some important aspects of where we wish to go in social media. And this has been a fantastic part of our journey. The SAGES Executive Committee held a retreat, which is not necessarily an annual event, but we had a lot of important business to tend to. As we grow bigger, how do we tend to important aspects of communication and infrastructure, governance? Finances are important. And how do we optimize our value to our members, to our patients, and others? This allowed us to come up with a lot of different strategic initiatives that we all agreed upon at a high level that we could then take to the SAGES Fall Retreat and Board meeting. And you can see just how much work is being done in these work groups shown in these pictures. I'd like to thank all of the individuals who volunteer their time and work so hard on our committees and our retreats. This individual is exceptional. Sally Matthews is our executive director. She joined SAGES in 1993 and has been our executive director since 1998. And Sally is pivotal to keeping the organization flowing smoothly, to looking out for our interests, to approaching situations in a calm and effective fashion, and keeping us organized in our thoughts. A special thank you to Sally. Special thank you to the Executive Committee that has been there steadfast for me as advisors of words of wisdoms, as differing opinions. So that this is not a singular president kind of approach to running this organization, but truly a team effort. And pictured here also is a special individual, certainly some advisors that I've already mentioned, but also a special individual, Shelley Ginsberg, who's the director of our industry relations and does a phenomenal job helping to raise the funds necessary so that we can accomplish the SAGES state of mind. A word about SAGES committees: they are the lifeblood of this organization so that we can get our work done. And to quote past President Nat Soper, SAGES is a meritocracy. If you look at these 36 committees and these committee chairs, these are not honorary positions. These are working committees. These are working positions, and people have worked very hard to accomplish these opportunities for leadership. We have over 600 members serving on these committees, and I would encourage all of you to sing out to this email address or contact any of us if you would like to be in the family of SAGES leadership. It's quite easy to accomplish, and we encourage bright people to join our ranks and help us accomplish our important work. Well, I think one of the hallmarks, beyond the work that we're doing, beyond the mentorship as part of the SAGES state of mind, is that we clearly think differently here. As a young child, I got to explore all sorts of different things, and I think we should embrace the curiosity of our youth. If you look at all of our past presidents, undoubtedly each and every one of these individuals had a sense of curiosity, had a sense of exploration, something that they wanted to explore further and deeper on behalf of our organization, and I applaud all of them. On a personal level, I'd like to thank so many people pictured in this slide that I can't personally call out and have individual photos around, but I've developed such strong relationships with so many people in this organization and with our past presidents that have served as role models and mentors to me that I wish to thank them from the bottom of my heart. Growing up was an interesting endeavor for me. You heard about art, you'll hear more about art. But my parents decided to build their own house. And so that meant for me and my brother weekends doing carpentry, doing painting, building porches, doing cleanup, and all sorts of miscellaneous adventures for about a year. And what I learned through that is that through teamwork, we can accomplish more together than we ever could individually. And that was a very important lesson. Well, it takes teamwork to make a dream work, and I've seen that here time and time again at SAGES. How do we accomplish such important work? How do we accomplish such prolific work? Well, it's through teamwork and committee work and board meetings and a lot of behind-the-scenes preparation, and I'm indebted to our members who work on these committees. I'm also indebted to our colleagues both throughout North America as well as abroad, because by establishing relationships that are enduring, With our brother and sister organizations, we can accomplish far more together through collaboration. And again, I'd like to emphasize our mindset here at SAGES that we embrace our brothers and sisters from around the world, and we're so thrilled that you're here with us today. I had wonderful role models, a little bit of what you've heard. Well, my mother was an artist, and shown here is when she was getting her master's in fine arts in the 1970s, and I learned creativity. If you look at this backdrop of this slide, it's a colored pencil drawing of crystal. Well, that's incredibly difficult to accomplish in that media. My dad was an engineer, a civil engineer, worked for the Corps of Engineers with a very keen analytical mind. He could dissect how things worked. I could ask him anything, mechanical, and he could tell me the answer. And more than anything, they taught me the value of working hard and being creative. Well, I think those are values that we embrace here at SAGES. I had the good fortune of attending Jesuit High School in New Orleans. And the mantra there is in Latin, but I'll break it down simple, and it said, to be a person for others, to be altruistic. We heard that in some messages yesterday, and I do believe that is part of the SAGES state of mind. If you look at all the volunteerism that we have both domestically and abroad through our activities, it is phenomenal how willing our members are to give their time to help others. If you look at the activities at our annual meeting, the Learning Center is a prime example. I have spent hours of my life, Dan has done so the same, many of you guys in the audience have done so the same, teaching other individuals at the Learning Center, and that's volunteerism and hard work. Same thing when our experts are willing to give their time to teach the latest techniques at our postgraduate courses. Same thing on the committees, but I don't think we can thank these people enough for accomplishing our important work. We also have a bit of fun at some of these, and I decided I'd pick photos that I had that were particularly good of the Montreal retreat when Jerry Freed was president. And you can see my good friend Ted Truss brought me some special beer from Dartmouth, and I was grateful for that. Thank you, Ted. You can also see Jerry is addressing the group. Jerry's wife Karen is talking to Barbara Bercy, and there's a social exchange. You can see George Bercy's head leaning down talking to Aurora Pryor, and Aurora Pryor's daughter sitting next to them. And you can see the relationships that are forming through these important events, and you can see how much work is being done around the table at our board meetings and our retreats. I think this is important to acknowledge the work being done and that sense of collaboration and socialization. Well, Alan O'Cronick is a Canadian that introduced me to this term joie de vivre. And one time we were sitting together and he told me, Danny, I think you're always kind of happy. You have joie de vivre. And I had to look it up and start understanding it. But it is joy. And I've seen it in our Canadian friends. Here's Jerry Freed dressed up as a Mountie at the sing-off of his presidential year. Next to him is Manabu Yamamoto, one of our key leaders from Japan, saying no SAGES, no life on a shirt. And that is joie de vivre. That is part of the SAGES state of mind. Family first, I think, is also an important concept to share with you and to embrace within this envelope of SAGES. My wife has always told me, including this morning, you're going to do great. And I had to ask her this morning, are you just saying that because you know it's in my slide deck, or are you just saying that because you've always said it? And she said the latter. I was very impressed. We've had a great time traveling in the United States together, traveling abroad a bit together. Her family is in Germany. We've had a great time of that. And we've seen a bit of the world together, and I'm extremely grateful for her partnership and her support. We have two beautiful daughters, Alexis, our oldest, and Caroline, our youngest, who are here with us today. And I'm grateful for the joy that they bring us and for the inspiration and the curiosity that they help us explore. They're always looking towards the next adventure that we can go on to as a family and are very excited to be on these adventures. Well, Sarah has shared my SAGES journey since it started. In 1999, here we are looking like almost mere children. And it has been quite a journey. In 2004, we were together when I received the Young Researcher Award. Call out to Eric Pauli, this year's winner. Congratulations. And you can see that we were so excited in this photograph that we're actually holding the plaque upside down. But it didn't matter. We were so happy. And Sarah was able to fly down just for a single night to be with me at SAGES San Antonio, since it was close to our home in Dallas. And shown here is Yumi Hori, our longtime SAGES staff and long-term friend of mine. And particularly nice was to mix our personal family with our SAGES family, which is a really special treat, as it is this year, for all of the family and friends that I have with me today. And this was the World Congress in Paris, where we had children from a myriad of SAGES members. You see Sarah leading George Bercy down the streets of Paris. You see us taking the subway together and just having a wonderful interaction. That's the SAGES state of mind. Serendipity has played a major role in my career, and I think it plays a major role in most of our careers. It's interesting, apparently it's a word in almost every language on the planet. And Dan's already shown this picture, but this was the real start of my journey in serendipity with Dan. 1998, he was junior faculty, I was a resident. And he showed me the way into minimally invasive surgery. He took me to SAGES in 1999. And I think we hear that story time and time again. Plug and play your own mentor with the same story, and I think you'll hear these words. And we've been on a great journey together, sharing the program chair roles in 2012, and it's been wonderful. Another great mentor is pictured here is a little bit more of a guy that you might not call to mind, might not know as well in SAGES, but he's been instrumental in my career. Standing next to me in that older SAGES photo is Bob Reach. And he was chairman for 13 years, both in my training and as I went on to be a faculty member. Standing here next to he and I is Mrs. Stortz in 1999 when she visited our center, and Jim Carrico, our chairman then, who was instrumental. Well, thank you, Dr. Reach, for all of your support over the years. You've been fantastic as a mentor to me. Well, Dr. Reach and Dr. Jones and I got together and started the simulation program at that time, and that led to a pivotal paper, and that really launched my career in simulation, and that's really the start, the bug that I got, as Dan said, to do academics. David Provost is here today, and I ate dinner last night with him. I wish to thank David for getting me into bariatrics. Dan and I paired up with David as a key bariatric guy back in the 90s, and the three of us did the first laparoscopic gastric bypass in Texas at that time. And that has been a large part of my career ever since. Thank you, David. Well, the 3 years that I spent at Tulane were pivotal as my first faculty position. And I thank Dr. Bob Hewitt, who was the chairman, for giving me the opportunities. And this was a wonderful time. A lot of energy, a lot of excitement. I got to build a simulation lab, explore robotics, really early in the evolution of that science. And if you look closely, I work with two key individuals that are well known within the SAGES family now. Jim Korndorfer was my first fellow, and he's pictured there, doesn't look too much different, and Dimitri Stefanidis, same thing. And I'm very proud of having them in the SAGES family and watching their careers develop. Gratitude is also part of the SAGES state of mind, and I owe a great deal of thanks to this individual and the people that have been part of my family when I moved back to Dallas. This is MK Adcock, my administrator, and I owe her a great deal of thanks. And MK, I hope you're watching the webcast. Thank you. Simulation team has been there time and time again. You know, the whole time they've been there and steadfast on this journey, supporting a lot of the activities and exemplifying teamwork and collaboration on the home front. Same thing with the resident team. This was one of the most difficult jobs that I'd ever faced. 5 years as a program director in the biggest surgery residency in the United States. Every single person on the slide was a pivotal part of our team. And without that sense of collegiality, collaboration, and contributions from each and every one of them, that job would not have been possible. And I thank each and every one of them. Have you hugged your program director today? That job is not appreciated nearly enough. And I would emphasize the criticality of that job to each department of surgery in the United States and elsewhere, and emphasize our relationships ongoing with the APDS and the ASE, two pivotal societies in surgical education, and I congratulate both of those organizations for supporting those endeavors. I'd also like to thank my partners, Dr. Puzzaferi, Watson, and Hennessy, who make our fellowship run smooth and make our clinical practice a united front, and without them, I would not be here. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about thinking differently in a little bit more of a futuristic fashion. So I like this old TV show, and it makes me think differently, think out of the box.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Anyway, as I've reflected on my journey this year, I think about this kind of corny TV show. But they're all united on this mission, just like we are at SAGES. And there's leadership, there's Captain Kirk, but he has all of these experts that he'll readily defer leadership to when the needs arise. And so I often found myself this year surrounded by smart people on the executive committee feeling this way as well. I also really identify with this show for innovation and exploration. I love this quote from Captain Kirk. There's no such thing as the unknown, only things temporarily hidden, temporarily not understood, and it underscores to me the importance of our research. If you look at all of the gadgets and wizardry that these science fiction writers dreamt up in the 60s, here we are 50 years later with only part of these devices becoming realities, and part of them still way out of our grasp. C. Walton Lillyhigh was a vascular surgeon, a cardiac surgeon, and I often read this quote, what mankind can dream, research and technology can achieve. He was way out there. He was doing cross-circulation, bypass circuits from one live human being to another in the 50s before the pumps were available. And I think that's certainly thinking outside the box. Well, who in our organization can you think of that has thought way outside the box? To me, that's George Bercy, who invented the Hopkins rod technology in the 50s, who invented the video chip camera. And if you've not seen Mike Brunt's fabulous documentary about George Bercy, I highly encourage you to watch it. And I'd like to give a shout out to Barbara Bercy. We love Barbara. She was our original executive director, and we love George and wish them the best. I also have to call him on Jeff Ponsky, a major force in American surgery and an innovator. He invented the PEG tube, and he's very well known for that. SAGES past president. And Jeff started talking about notes in 2004, and I heard that. And serendipity struck my career again and got me on the road to innovation. I applied for a traveling fellowship. I got to go to London and work with my friend Paul Swain, a pioneer in gastroenterology, invented the pill capsule endoscopy technology, and I got to bring my family on yet another trip, which was great. And I got to spend time exchanging ideas with Paul and his engineers. I knew bariatric surgery, I knew MIS surgery, they knew gastroenterology, and they knew notes. And that was a fabulous exchange. I got back to Dallas and really had additional serendipity happen. Namely, I ran into one of my colleagues, Jeff Cadedu, a urologist. He was working already with two engineers, Raul Fernandez and Richard Bergs, on this magnetically anchored technology. Shu Teng is pictured on my right, a gastroenterologist, and we partnered. And we went on this 7-year journey that was fabulous, and I think exemplifies journeys that many of us in SAGES take and are invaluable. Well, we explored these magnetically anchored instruments for notes, and shown here are some of our prototypes. Shown here are a few more of our prototypes. And I'll show you a few snippets of a transvaginal procedure that we were working on. We're going in and getting our instruments deployed. And this was great fun. You can see a grasper grabbing the gallbladder, elevating it up to a reasonable extent. And then this was my all-time favorite instrument, the cautery instrument, because it was good fun. You can see on the inset, my right hand is driving a magnet on the external surface of the abdomen. In synchrony, the device moves smoothly. The automatic arm deploys, remote control style. And then we can actually dissect. I can dissect the gallbladder with a fair amount of finesse and to complete this procedure with no incisions on the abdominal wall. To me, that was a lot of fun, a lot of innovation. We were able to get Paul Swain back to Dallas in '07, did a nonstop 2.5-day lab stint with him and cranked out projects, and took him to dinner at a favorite local Mexican restaurant. Jim Watson treated us to dinner that night. He was a VP of technology at our place at that time. Jim had spent his entire career at Texas Instruments, and he introduced me to this concept called the lunatic fringe. And at TI, they had people who have been given free rein to follow their curiosity wherever it goes. And that's how they innovated within this monstrosity of a company. Well, our lunatic fringe was being introduced to the franchise development group with one of our industry partners, with Ethicon. And they introduced us to Storts, an imaging group. And shown here are all of their engineers in our lab in Dallas. And we had that type of opportunity to collaborate, to share ideas, and to develop these devices. It also afforded me fantastic opportunities to travel, to talk about our research, both here in the United States and elsewhere, and form lifelong relationships with many of these people, and to really have a lot of fun along the way. It also gave me an opportunity to become deeply involved in NOSCAR. And David Ratner, who won the Bercy Lifetime Achievement Award this week, was pivotal in that, and we got to form some interesting clubs for outings during those meetings. This has been a great journey to see that work being accomplished. This was actually a slide from industry at one of those non-CME meetings, where we can see just how far along we had gotten with an imaging element, a very commercial-looking device, and we were simply a 510K with human data away from a clinical launch. Unfortunately, that's when the economic downturn hit, and that whole franchise development group disbanded. And that was the end, for the most part, of our journey on MAGS. But I would not give it up for the world. I would not give up one single hour of many hours and days that we spent in the lab learning these techniques and learning how to push the envelope in endoscopy and in these new instruments. I learned about device development, about sponsored research agreements, about intellectual property, about patents, and about how to navigate the regulatory pathways and how to interact in a very meaningful fashion with industry. And that was a great journey. I think many of you have taken similar innovation journeys, and I encourage it as a SAGES state of mind to keep taking those journeys, whether they pan out or not. We must experiment to innovate. Innovation at SAGES still holds true. Look at this meeting and look at all the work being done. And I think this is an interesting paradigm. A friend of mine gave me this slide, and this is an endoscopic sleeve gastrectomy. Well, it doesn't look as good as the one I might do laparoscopically, but it looks pretty good for no incisions. Is this the future? We don't know, but we must remain true to our roots at SAGES to embrace flexible endoscopy and to promote it, and that we are doing. We have partnered with the American Board of Surgery, and we are very proud of them launching the flexible endoscopy curriculum and us being a part of that with our Fundamentals of Endoscopic Surgery program for high-stakes assessment. We are experts at SAGES for innovating educational programs such as FES or our long-standing track record in FLS, some data from our institution shown here. And we have a very good backbone and infrastructure. Here are two people, key, Inga and Carla, running these programs. You're going to hear a lot more about Fuse from Dan Jones, who is pivotal to this effort, about surgical energy, and Jessica is behind the scenes helping us so wonderfully on this. And so because of our innovation and education, we now have contributed meaningfully to a relationship with the American Board of Surgery, both on the fundamentals programs as well as to the content of the SCORE curriculum. And we need to maintain this and embrace it. A special acknowledgement to Frank Lewis, who served as the executive director of the American Board for 15 years and recently announced his retirement. Frank has been an outstanding partner to SAGES. We thank him for that, and we wish him the best on his well-deserved upcoming retirement. Well, Steve Evans was the chair of the American Board this past year, and he really championed resident redesign and provocative thoughts around that, and I applaud Steve for his efforts in this arena. Past president of SAGES, John Hunter, is now the chair of the American Board of Surgery and is maintaining this focus on competency-based assessment to improve resident education. And so that's really where I learned about EPAs and trustable professional activities. Jaap Bonnier is our Gerald Marks lecturer that I'll introduce for the next lecture after mine, and he's going to tell you all about the fantastic work that he has done in the Netherlands looking at competency-based training. Well, as it pertains to SAGES, we've had a major role in fellowships. Since 1997, establishing the Minimally Invasive Fellowship Council that now has evolved into the Fellowship Council, we've had key leaders shown here having major roles in the evolution of this organization. And we now represent 59% of the fellowships in this country in these specialty areas of minimally invasive and flexible endoscopy. Well, the Fellowship Council issued this announcement that their board had agreed to plans around EPAs for fellows. And I'm proud to announce that SAGES will be part of each and every one of these content working groups to help map out the future of fellowship training. Here in our own organization, for several years, we've had very important discussions around the fellowships. And last year, we really made headway, even under Brian Duncan's presidency the year before, to retool our Resident Education Committee, to call that our Resident and Fellow Training Committee, and then the board directed us to redefine our MIS criteria. And that we have done. It pleases me greatly to show you this letter from me to Raul Rosenthal, President of the Fellowship Council, announcing our plans to pilot these new criteria listed here. And instead of just having 150 cases of any type, we have now defined half of that experience to come from specific categories. We have also stipulated that one foregut procedure needs to be submitted as an unedited video for assessment of proficiency. This is avant-garde. This is the state of mind. Our goals with this is to retain heterogeneity, but better define the core components so that we can apply the EPA technologies, methodologies into this and enhance the educational quality of our fellows. The pilot will be conducted this year with a staged implementation plan pending those results. We are also very pleased to announce the launch of our listserv next week. Similar to the APDS listserv, we think that we need to be there to communicate effectively for our program directors of fellowships, and this is our next pilot in that foray. I really like this paper from the Michigan group looking at bariatric surgery, 20 surgeons in practice ostensibly doing a good job, and what they showed carefully from a large amount of data are two important findings. One, performance varied widely amongst these 20 surgeons in practice. And then two, what this slide shows is a direct correlation between skill level and patient outcomes in terms of morbidity and mortality. So we need to address surgeon performance. I'm a huge fan of Anders Ericsson's work on deliberate practice, and we know we can teach people along the spectrum of lifelong learning, and Anders has taught us this. Instead of getting out of all of your training and stagnating relatively soon into your practice at an acceptable level, I think SAGES members, SAGES state of mind, is to push ourselves further up that top curve to expert performance. We wish to be the experts, and that takes deliberate practice and continual growth and learning. We have very carefully thought about these concepts over the last couple of years and had a pivotal retreat about a year ago in Boston where we mapped out our pathway to offer our members what we think will be the future of surgical education, for the next decade or so in our organization, and that's going to be the master's program. And I hope you've already heard a lot about it. Our content pathways are listed here, and up in the right-hand corner are 3 learning levels: competency, proficiency, and mastery. And at each of these levels, there's a different pathway containing didactic materials. Importantly, we view ourselves as the video society, and anchoring procedures are part of this, to submit video to the social network, Facebook groups that you heard Brian Jacob talking about yesterday, and to create this culture of safe, peer-reviewed environment for feedback and coaching. Where are we on that Berkmeyer curve? Are we one of the top performers, or are we one of the low performers? And we aim to help people understand that and to get along their learning curve in any domain they wish. Keep an eye out for these on the program this year. They map into this curriculum and are part of our program. Finally, I'll wrap up with a few concepts around SAGES wellness. Stanley Kubrick's one of my favorite directors. My wife and I were on yet another trip for a special birthday for her. We went to Beverly Hills, dream come true. We went to the LACMA Museum. I'll show James Terrell, and an artist that I like. We saw an exhibit there, but they happen to have a Stanley Kubrick exhibit too. And I took these photos then. And I like The Shining. It's a creepy movie, but all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And I think we need to think about that in the SAGES state of mind. When I'm in Dallas, I love to go biking. It gives me great pleasure to be outside, clear my mind, and to go exercise. When I'm not in Dallas, I really love hiking. And this is a family and friend event, and it's a great way to share some time and the outdoors. I recently went on a fishing trip with my brother shown here and some friends, and that was good fun. And I love going hunting because I go with people that generally think quite a bit different than many of the people I'm surrounded with in my day job. And this gives me a chance to bond with people I went to college with and old friends. I will close with another concept around art. Art to me is innovation. Art to me is avant-garde. Those are part of the SAGES state of mind. These are two beautiful pieces of my mother. You can see my two little girls at an earlier stage of their life in one. And I think that gives us a lot to think about, to how to think differently. This is a sculpture at the Fort Worth Modern Museum. Love it. Every time I look at it, it's electrifying to me. This is James Turrell, a guy of space and light. Has anybody ever seen his work? It is really crazy. You can't project it on a slide, but if you get to see it, I would highly encourage it. Alexander Calder popularized mobiles. Air currents move these things around. They never look the same. They are profound when you walk into a museum like this and see a huge one. And finally, Cause is a guy that is under 40 and is a pop artist that I think rivals Andy Warhol and others. So in conclusion, I hope I've effectively shared with you bits and pieces of my journey that illustrate the SAGES state of mind. And every word on this slide, I think, is a component of that state of mind. We're extremely proud of the work that we do at SAGES. I'm grateful for the friendships and for the work that everyone does here at SAGES. SAGES is our home away from home, and it's so wonderful to be with everyone today and have this tremendous opportunity. I love SAGES, and I know you do too. Thank you very much.
Danny, awesome. Great talk. The plaque, our new president, what it says, Danny, is with gratitude for your tenacity, focus, and energetic leadership and for SAGES. I think what we really should say is for your hard work, your creativity, and as your Spock, live long and prosper.
Thank you, Dan.